Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 9th through 15th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 4 movies, and I listened to 2 books. First this week we have the second and final book I read for Galaxy-a-thon, and that was The Galaxy and the Ground Within. This is the 4th in the Wayfarer series, and I read the other 3 books years ago, so I'm glad I finally got around to this one. Although this is a series, it is very loosely connected, so you could actually read these all as standalones, but knowing the characters from previous books kind of helps a little bit. That being said, it wasn't until one of the characters in this book was talking about a different character that I was like, oh yeah, that person did have somebody they were always hanging out with. Did I know that they were in a relationship before? I'm not entirely certain. In this particular installment of the series, we were following some characters who are on this very small planet that's basically a rest stop next to where people do all of their traveling, so basically near all these different wormholes you can go to. Chad said it best in that it's kind of like a space hostel. We've got these 2 characters that live on the planet and manage this hotel of sorts, and then we've got 3 different people that are staying there when all of a sudden everything is grounded, nobody's allowed to go anywhere because the satellite systems are down. This obviously causes some problems because people have places to be and you figure out what those reasons are throughout this book. It's also just such a cozy space book, and I knew that going into it because I've read previous books by Becky Chambers. What's really interesting about reading this is going into it, you don't know what any of the characters look like, and you get these little details here and there, and sometimes you'll get a detail that completely changes what you were picturing in your mind, which is just so cool. What's fun is I have the first 3 books right here. They've always been right here, and the 4th book was actually Chad's because I lent those to him in 2020. He read them all, and then he eventually got the 4th book and he read it, and I completely forgot to until now. So I'm glad the Galaxy-a-thon gave me that shove to find an alien encounter book because everybody in this book was aliens. The other book that I read this week is called Murder in Tinseltown, and this is a choose-your-own-murder mystery adventure. Essentially, it's the night before these very big awards in Hollywood in 1956, and we see this woman who is the top of her class. She's 27, she's rich, she's famous, she's got all these people wanting to work with her, and unfortunately she ends up deceased. A few chapters into this book, you become the detective who hears about a disturbance at this hotel. You go to find out what's going on, you find out that this person has died, and you try to figure out who did it. It's a very, very good idea. However, when you're actually reading the chapters of like, if you choose to do this, go to this page, sometimes it just doesn't line up with what you were being told the option was, and sometimes you'll kind of do these loops, and other times it'll be like, oh, you've already talked to that character, they've left the scene, but on this next section you go to, they're there again for some reason. Overall, it's a very good idea, and it was kind of fun to try to figure out who done it, but at the same time it was a little bit infuriating because you're like, okay, yeah, this doesn't make any sense because I've already done this, or I've gone on this loop, or that room exploded twice, or you're telling me to go up to that room that I know is already exploded because I was there when it exploded, and things like that. Also, and this is such a very tiny thing, but while I was reading it, I noticed that there were certain word choices that were just wrong for Hollywood in the 1950s. And it came as no surprise to me when I got to the end and realized that this book was published in the UK and things like lift instead of elevator were used. So a little more attention to detail would have gone a really long way in this book. As for the shows I watched this week, we watched the latter half of the 4th season of What We Do in the Shadows. This one continues the growing up of a certain character who came from a different character, if you know, you know. And we also get to see a very big character reveal, which was very nice to see. And then at the end of this season, we see something is going to happen next season, assumably, that one of the characters has been waiting for since the very beginning of the show, so I'm interested to see how it goes. The other show I watched was the entire 1st series, the entire 2nd series, and 2 episodes into the 3rd series of Shetland. This takes place on the Shetland Islands, which is a location I've always wanted to go, at least since I read about them when I was reading a book, I think when I was living in Edinburgh actually. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was kind of this murder mystery book, and it had to do with these creatures that are kind of to do with the folklore of that island, and I think an archaeological dig. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, please let me know. But this is a group of islands that I guess are about a 12-hour ferry ride north of mainland Scotland. And it's super small town vibes because you'll have kind of the main island, but then you'll have all these other little islands, and sometimes this character has to go there to solve things. This is all about a detective, or whatever his rank is, because honestly I don't understand the ranks of the UK departments, called Jimmy Perez. And the format of this is really interesting because the base material for this show is books. So in the first series, which is only 2 episodes, each episode is basically half of a book. So you put them together and it's one of her books. I think this kind of might have been a pilot project just to make sure this format would actually work, because in the second series you have 6 episodes, so 3 books. And I expected this format to continue, but I got into the 3rd series, watched the 2nd episode of the 3rd series, and then realized I had questions and it hadn't wrapped up all nicely. And I realized from here, just by looking at episode titles, that it's just episodic, and we're no longer doing the 2 episodes to a book thing. And there's 9 seasons, so I've got lots to go. But what I liked about the format initially was you could see these little skips in time between the books. So for instance, he has a daughter. She was 16 at the beginning of this, and now she's in university. And anything that was kind of new in the lives of the characters that you didn't really know about since the last book would basically be talked about in some exposition. So it was a point where it was like, oh yeah, that character went from being a bachelor to being like moved in with this woman that has kids, and that's just a fast thing, but he's in love, so why not? Little things like that. Or for example, from the first season to the 2nd season, you have somebody being like, oh, why isn't Tosh here? Oh, she's at the dentist. You know it's because she was getting her braces off, because she had braces in the 1st season, but she doesn't have braces in the 2nd season. It's just a very cool murder mystery show with beautiful scenery because of where it's set. And so far, I'm very much enjoying it. On to the shows I watched. The first one isn't a full movie, it's an hour-long comedy special, and it's Hank Green pissing out cancer. If you've never heard about Hank Green before, he's kind of a jack of all trades. He started out as a science communicator. You might know him from Vlogbrothers or SciShow or Crash Course or many other different programs on YouTube. But then he's also the inventor of things like 2D glasses, so if all of your friends want to go to a 3D movie but they give you headaches, you can wear these glasses instead and it will just show you the movie as it's actually supposed to be. And then after that he decided he wanted to start a band, so he did, and then after that he decided he wanted to write books, so he did, and then after having cancer he decided he wanted to study comedy and do a comedy special, which he did. As you can gather from the title, this one talks a lot about his cancer diagnosis and what going through that was like, and little different changes that he went through because of this. He's currently in remission, if you're not aware. And I'm constantly fascinated by his ability to learn the rules of how to do new things and to take on new, different, creative endeavors, and this one was successful in my opinion. Next we have The Other Guys, which is a buddy cop movie with Will Ferrell and Marky Mark. What's his actual name? Mark Wahlberg. There we go. There were a lot of music references in this, and I thought it would be really funny if at some point they were playing some of his old music, although I wouldn't be able to tell you that's what they were doing because I don't follow music that closely. I just know Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch was a thing. Also, his character definitely has an anger issue, and in my head I decided that this is an earlier version of the same character that he plays in Flight Risk, because that would just be funny to me. That's just a weird headcanon for you. This one, 2 buddy cops. One of them really likes staying at his desk, not going anywhere. The other one wants to be out there making big callers. He's actually been demoted recently, which is a really big bummer to his career. And he's stuck working with this guy he doesn't really want to work with, but they end up having to work together, having to figure their stuff out. It goes from there. It's a silly comedy buddy cop movie. Some of it obviously was ridiculous, but it was kind of fun. It feels like there's a lot of crime content in this wrap up, because the next thing I watched is A Shot in the Dark, which is a 1964 Inspector Clouseau movie. If you've never seen one of these before, they're very much slapstick comedy. So for example, somebody will open a door and hit somebody out of a window, that type of thing, or somebody will grab onto somebody's arm and accidentally pull the sleeve off their jacket. Those types of things. The premise was so ridiculous. It was like Inspector Clouseau goes to a nudist colony to try to solve a murder, and we're like, what? Okay, that's gonna be ridiculous. So we watch it and I absolutely forgot that was the premise of it, because that doesn't actually happen until more than halfway through the movie. Additionally, this is the type of movie where you don't really understand who done it unless you hear one very specific line. So, you know, have fun with that. The other movie I watched was just very weirdly styled, and I do not know how to feel about certain parts. Actually, I feel really gross about certain parts. I think that's how I feel about certain parts. This one was called Final Girl. This one's from 2016, and it's about this girl who, she's young and her parents have died, and the very first scene is she's sitting there with this guy in what kind of looks like like an interrogation room, and he's like, do you know what happened? She's like, yeah, my parents died. And he's like, how do you feel about it? She's like, people die every day. And you're like, this is weird. And he gives her like a maze to solve, and then she can do it really easily. And he's like, hey, do you want to come with me? And she's like, do I get ice cream? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then from there, he teaches her how to be an assassin. Except for we have no idea if this is just some really random strange guy who has kidnapped her and created an assassin over a number of years, or if they work within some kind of organization. We have no idea. This movie doesn't tell you that. What we do see is she's given this assignment to kind of integrate herself into this small town where these 4 boys are definitely terrorizing and murdering girls. So she pretends to be the new girl in town. One of them asks her on a date because she's exactly his type, and she decides to go with him, and then him and his friends pick her up and they go to this place in the woods and they start playing a game, and oh, the game is actually we're going to hunt you, but they don't know she's a trained assassin and she's going to hunt them. It sounds interesting or whatever, but the styling of this is super weird. For example, the guys always wear tuxedos when they go on these hunts, and even one of the guys has a girlfriend and she's always like, why are you guys constantly going to the forest wearing tuxedos? What the hell? There's also a section before she makes contact with these boys that I could have done without being in the movie, and that's her being in the same hotel room as her handler, as she calls him, and it looks like she's trying to seduce him, and he's like, no. And she's like, but you're my trainer, you should train me. And I'm like, I almost threw up in my mouth. I was like, what the hell is this situation? There was no sexual contact, but there shouldn't have been. There shouldn't have even been an offer of it. It was so weird and gross, and I didn't like it. Moving on, as for the books I listened to, the first one was very short, and that's The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. This is only about a 2-hour audiobook, and this has 2 to 4 different little essays in it. I feel like it was just 2. I feel like there was a short essay at the beginning, which was him writing a letter to his nephew, who shares a name with him, and then the second essay, which was The Fire Next Time, which is based on a Bible quote, if I'm remembering correctly. I listened to this at the very beginning of the week. The details are gone from my brain, but I have the broad strokes. I mostly picked this up because this is on a list of banned books. Books that people in America have a problem with other people reading, and essentially I can tell you it was on there because it's a black man talking about his experience. And not only on a global scale do we need to rally against book banners, but the whole notion of libraries in America is possibly going to be executive ordered out soon, which is just ridiculous. Another reason I picked this one up is James Baldwin is on a very long list of authors that I should eventually read from, and I should actually read his fiction at some point, but this one came from the library sooner. The other audiobook I listened to is Celestial Monsters, which is the second in the Sunbearer duology. I assume that's what it's called, I don't actually know. It's by Aidan Thomas, it's the Sunbearer Trials and Celestial Monsters. So, there are certain things I can't tell you about this book because it's the second in a duology. What I can tell you about this world is it's so vibrant, and we have this cast of characters who are semidiosos. So in this world they have parents who are gods, essentially. They also have this weird tier system where pure blood gods or something like that have gold blood, but our main character Tio has jade blood, but gods or semi-gods with this blood are looked down upon. I can't remember exactly why that's a thing. Maybe that's what happens when it's gods and humans have a child. I honestly can't remember all of the lore. I actually really should have done like a review of what happened in the first book before diving into this one, and I didn't, and I kind of regret doing that. However, most of the things I needed to remember kind of came up naturally, and I was able to be like, oh yeah, this character, I forgot about that character is really cool, and things like that. This book, in essence, is following characters trying to fix something that happened at the end of the previous book, and I obviously can't tell you what that is, because spoilers, you should just read these books. I very much enjoyed being reintroduced to these characters and what the stakes actually were at this point, and then trying to figure out how they were gonna fix this problem, because I couldn't see a way to do it. I'm a fan of Aidan Thomas's writing, however, there was this one thing that, since it's been pointed out as an annoying thing in books in general, mostly by Rachel, thanks Rachel. Anytime it happens in a book, I'm like, oh no, it's that thing. And that's when people describe something as a blank of blank and blank, kind of like the Sarah J. Maas book titles, but people use that exact format in actual writing, which wouldn't bother me if it didn't come up like 4 times in this book. And that's really not the author's fault. That's now just a thing that I notice every time it happens. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment, but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!